There are few things in this industry that are worse than seeing a once great franchise crumbling slowly over time. And while it's not always as dramatic as that, there's plenty of examples of industry stalwarts out there that right now are in a similar position. Stagnancy, developers consistently making decisions that are unpopular with fans, franchises losing their identities for one reason or the other, or perhaps a combination of several. These franchises are far from being in the shape that they should ideally be in. Of course, what we would really want is for these franchises to shake themselves out of this lull and come back stronger than ever, and just because we're mentioning them in this list doesn't mean that we've lost all faith that they will be able to do just that. But if they do keep going the way that they have been going, it would honestly be far more preferable to see them take a step back and take a hiatus, or perhaps even go away entirely. Call of Duty. Call of Duty has been far less consistent for, well, pretty much since the beginning of the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One generation. Call of Duty Ghosts was an underwhelming mess. Its most recent release, Call of Duty Vanguard, is probably one of the most forgettable, lackluster, and creatively bankrupt Call of Duty games we've had in recent memory. It's clear that this is a series that needs to go back to the drawing board and figure out a way to successively reinvent itself. FIFA. The moment EA introduced Ultimate Team, everything changed for FIFA. What had once been the premier football simulation series that was actually willing to make meaningful improvements on a consistent basis turned into a mega corporation's biggest money-making machine. You'd think that EA would want to invest that money back into improving the core gameplay experience of the FIFA games, and while they certainly have made some improvements over the years, by and large, things have been declining on a consistent basis. Fans of the series' staple career mode have been displeased with the state of things for several years running. Baffling decisions by the developers have undermined much needed gameplay changes, and the bulk of the focus has been on pushing Ultimate Team and the microtransactions it goes hand in hand with. Far Cry. The Ubisoft open world formula is a perfect example of how things can go wrong when you just get too much of a good thing. Far Cry is one of those Ubisoft franchises that has stuck to the formula without many meaningful deviations over the years, and we're now at a point where it's just feeling a bit stale. Far Cry 6 is not a bad game by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, viewed in a vacuum, it's a really well-made, very enjoyable open-world shooter. But you can't view things in a vacuum. Far Cry is in desperate need of a reinvention, and it doesn't help that, as per reports, that reinvention will come in the form of an online-focused live service game. Ghost Recon. Here's another Ubisoft franchise that has suffered at the hands of an insistence on following a factory-made open-world formula. Ghost Recon was once all about linear tactical shooting, and that was what fans loved about the series' 2017 Ghost Recon Wildlands, brought the notorious Ubisoft bloat to the franchise, but even so, that tactical core was still present, and the game itself was a lot of fun to play, especially in co-op. Then came Ghost Recon Breakpoint, which felt like a major step back for the series. Rather than building on its predecessor's solid foundations, it instead delivered a broken, unenjoyable game that made baffling decisions in an effort to turn into a poor man's Division clone. And then, in all its wisdom, rather than giving the fans what they want, Ubisoft instead unveiled Ghost Recon Frontline, a free-to-play battle royale first-person shooter. Because we don't have enough of those, right? Overwatch. On paper, it might seem strange for a franchise that's really just a single game to be featured in a list such as this one, especially when that game itself is one of the best games of its generation. But Blizzard could not have managed Overwatch worse if it had tried. In 2016, the stellar hero shooter was an absolute revelation, but as time has gone on, Overwatch's stock has plummeted. Not only have updates for the game dried up almost completely, with its player base being hung out to dry, Blizzard has also made baffling decisions with its sequel, which seems like it's neither a full sequel nor a significant update to the first game, but instead a bit of both. Most importantly, the sequel itself is clearly in a lot of trouble right now, what with a complete lack of meaningful updates from Blizzard and the fact that it was just recently delayed when it didn't even have a launch window to begin with. World of Warcraft. Yeah, another Blizzard property. Blizzard is not in a good place right now, in case you haven't caught on, and that's putting it mildly. And World of Warcraft isn't technically a franchise, but for an MMO that has been going for nearly 2 decades and has received 8 major expansions, not to mention WoW Classic, it's basically as good as one. Sadly, things have been going downhill for this once great MMO for a long time. One after the other, its expansions have disappointed the player base, and that player base itself has been dwindling. The fact that Blizzard's singular focus on WoW has also meant the death of the actual strategy Warcraft series has also left many disgruntled. Destiny. Admittedly, out of all the franchises mentioned here, Destiny is the one that's in the best shape. It's chock full of content, it gets regularly updated, fans are heavily invested in the universe, and on a fundamental level, it's an absolute blast to play, though that shouldn't surprise anyone seeing as it's a Bungie-made first-person shooter. But Bungie has made some less than popular decisions with Destiny of late, with the vaulting of content, even if you've paid for it, being particularly unpopular. The Witch King does look promising, and Bungie's insistence on supporting the game for the foreseeable future deserves props, but they do need to turn things around quickly. Hopefully, Destiny's inclusion in this list will have aged horribly in a few months' time. Watch Dogs. Watch Dogs just hasn't managed to find its identity. The series obviously generated a lot of buzz before it ever began, but we all know how that turned out, with Watch Dogs 1 being one of the most disappointing games of its time. It looked like Ubisoft was turning things around with Watch Dogs 2, which admittedly was a genuinely well-made game that made much closer to realizing the series' potential. But then, Watch Dogs Legion took a wild left turn, and while there are many who do enjoy what it offers, the vast majority of players haven't been the biggest fans of its experiment, or more specifically, how it executed its experimental ideas. This is one of those franchises where, when you look at it, it's hard to nail down what its identity is and what sort of experiences it should offer. Ubisoft seems to be convinced that Watch Dogs is one of its flagship properties, but honestly, it just doesn't seem like people are completely on board with that notion. Dynasty Warriors. This is probably one of the most obvious picks out of all the franchises mentioned in this list. Dynasty Warriors has inherent, undeniable appeal, and there's no getting around that. But sadly, the series hasn't been at its best for quite some time. Far from it, in fact. It tried to reinvent itself with the open world Dynasty Warriors 9, which didn't work out the way fans would have wanted. But even when it's just doing what it's known for, Dynasty Warriors feels stagnant, like it has nothing new left to offer. Crossovers with other franchises using the formula have worked out rather well in recent years, especially with the likes of Persona 5 Strikers and Hyrule Warriors. So it's not like the core idea itself is running out of steam. But the main franchise seems to be going nowhere. Right now, it doesn't look like Koei Tecmo and Omega Force are clear on where to take the series other than more crossovers. So until they can figure this out, maybe crossovers is all that this IP should continue as. So what are your thoughts on this? Go ahead and share them in the comments below, and if you liked the video, please subscribe to the channel and enable all notifications by clicking the bell icon to get new video updates. We upload every day and would really appreciate your support. Thanks for watching.